have a chance when you're ready. You want to
Okay.
read the room and find the little...
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're going to move on with Adam.
All right, we're good? You ready? All right. So I want to start with some acknowledgments here. My advisor, Dr. Stephen Galpine, my faculty mentors, Christina Sazua and Mike Mowry, as well as the entire Interdisciplinary Studies program here, especially Dr. Freeland and Eric Brown. My cameraman, collaborator, Thomas Hayden, and my design, hair, and wardrobe consultant, my sister, Kay Ellerbrock. Alright, so synergistic integration of music and visual arts in music. So what that means is essentially putting together a music video that's not just the classic band performing on a fire escape, but rather a musical piece and a visual piece that combine together into one that is greater than the sum of its parts. So a little bit of background about myself. I started out in sort of between music and visual arts separately, and then came to INDS as a way to combine those. That way was, as I said, the music video, specifically a synergistic music video. So to combine that, I started out with this research, which was what elements and methods can I learn from 4 outstanding music videos to inform my own integration of music and visual arts as I compose, record, film, and produce my own interdisciplinary music video. The 4 videos in question were Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, Dire Straits' Money for Nothing, OK Go's Rube Goldberg Machine, and REM's Imitation of Life. And I hypothesized that by studying those 4 videos in particular, as well as a larger study that I did with Stephen Galpine, I hypothesized that I could develop a method for synergistically blending those 2 mediums. So to do that, this is my scholarship of interdisciplinarity. I have certain concepts like color and lighting that and on the musical side, timbre, texture, and dynamics that had similar applications to their independent disciplines and potential links between the 2. And by redefining, I could draw out those links and connect them more cohesively. Each discipline also had shared concepts like aesthetic and mood that were the same basic concept but in a different format. So those I could extend to combine the 2 of them. And finally, I had a process of checks and balances in which I had to sort of go back and forth between the 2 mediums, both in my research and in the creation of the music video, to sort of balance the 2 and make sure that neither overpowered the other and that both were still cohesive throughout. And this all came together into my compound concept of the interdisciplinary music video. So as far as the research, a few examples of how that applied. There were things I noticed that, such as in the OK Go video, This Too Shall Pass, Rube Goldberg Machine. There were things like these distinct color palettes and how they changed over the music video as well that would relate to similar changes in the music. So it would start out with this really bold, bombastic music, and then similarly related colors, really bold, saturated colors, and like stark contrast between them. But then, as the piece evolved into like a more sort of subdued musical palette, the visuals would follow suit, and also become a little more pastel, a little more blended. As you can see in this picture, where it's like a sky blue and kind of a toned down green a little bit more, as well as more white, or a softer white. For the principles of aesthetic and mood, I noticed them especially in the Dire Straits video on the far side there, where they harnessed the 80s aesthetic, both in sound and vision, thereby like extending the same concept to both mediums. So I want to give you now my music video. It went through a long and arduous, but really, really fun process of revisions and such. It started out as a shot similar to this, but much more boring, in which I sat on a stool and played guitar for 2.5 minutes. It then evolved into a more in-depth narrative that involved a raft, building a raft and lugging it around at all hours of the day. And then finally it turned away from that narrative and gleaned what it could from the visual concept that it had created to make this, a lovely story about, well, you'll see. So here it is.
I count the times I haven't seen you. I think about the things I never told you. Please try to understand, it's not what I wanted, just got a bit out of hand. If I could pull you aside just a moment of your time, I swear if you're still there, it won't take all night. If you're busy, that's alright. I just wanted to say, I can't get you off of my mind. Gray eyes, did I ever stand a chance? You're more than I could ever say, more than I could ever express. And I'm sorry if I bothered you, or gotten you upset. I need to get this off of my chest. I know you probably don't feel the same way, and I understand if you don't know what to say. I could wait for the rest of my life. Even if I never see you, at least I won't forget your gray eyes.
So, spoilers, it's not done yet. I'm planning on doing another take, getting the acting a little more acceptable, and also just cleaning it up. On that note, something I learned about music videos through all of this, they're really hard to make. It's a pain, but it's also very rewarding. So, a little how that worked in terms of the interdisciplinarity of it. So as you can see throughout that, there were instances where, like, I'd use negative space, a concept of visual art, to tie to things like the dynamics or the texture of the song. Yeah. It was a very sparse song. It was really just 2-3 instruments at some point. And so to draw that out, I used concepts of negative space and visual art, where it was a very sparse composition as well. It was really just me on camera with a pretty unimportant background. I also used concepts of extension in a similar way to the previous videos, where the aesthetic and the mood were supposed to be cohesive throughout both mediums. So there was the sort of, again, sparse aesthetic, but also the vulnerability in the mood, and that was present through both the minimalism in the music and the video, as well as the limitations in the color palette. Checks and balances was the really fun one in making this. The whole process for it would involve me coming up with some vague concept, then kind of shedding it with my collaborator Thomas to come up with something a little more defined, and then bringing it to Stephen McAlpine and my faculty mentors to really come into some concrete, physical piece. And then start all over again and go through it and again and again and again for 6 months. In conclusion, this was not about reinventing the wheel. It was about reverse engineering it. It was about sort of taking what already existed and turning it back, dissecting it, and figuring out what made it work, and then applying those concepts to my own ideas. And that was sort of the foundation for this whole interdisciplinary approach, was dissecting it, using interdisciplinary methods, and then putting it back together in a different form in those same methods. And in the future, I just want to explore that more, see how closely I can integrate the two mediums, working towards sort of simultaneous composition of both.
Questions for Adam?
I'm walking out, not because that was awful, because I've got to go teach, but I've got a question.
You don't have to lie for me.
In terms of, I think this is checks and balances, depending on how you define it. What struck me in this most recent version of the video is the symbolism of the empty swing, the empty park bench, and that's something that emerged in this back and forth, right? Like, I've watched you struggle. Like you said, it's really difficult to make a music video. And I think by reverse engineering the wheel, you mean reverse engineering the modern music video that's not just a lame camera on a songwriter the whole time,
Exactly.
right? And so I guess the question is, what did you learn about telling a story visually that complements the lyrics without making them literal? Like, you could have had a picture of gray eyes up there, and that wouldn't have worked, whatever you mean by that, right?
Right.
Because it's literal. So my question for you is, what did you learn about telling a complementary visual story that symbolizes the lyrics without being literal? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think the biggest lesson was don't start with a narrative, because that's, I think, where I went wrong with the raft idea, and sad to see it go, but the key to the final video was definitely starting with a visual concept that drew upon the similar concepts of the technical mediums themselves, such as color and timbre, as well as the aesthetic and mood of each. And started with that and built upon it in two different directions, both making a lyrical narrative and a visual narrative.
And by visual concept, do you mean you sitting on the stoop, or the new visual images that emerged?
Not the images themselves, but rather the theme throughout of initially the personified camera, and then the twist and revelation of the camera no longer being personified.
Okay, good.
I did have a question.
Mhm.
What, is there any significance to the gray eyes, or is that like a literal thing? Like, did the
yeah,
person actually
literal.
have gray eyes?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So in the videos, especially in the beginning, there are many cuts that you can tell that there is significant color difference. For example, in the morning it's very blue, and there are videos of you indoors like dark and warm. And there are also ones when at night at the campus library where it's like blue, purplish. Is it on purpose that you make it to have certain color tone to fit your lyrics?
It's not on purpose. That's something that I'm going to work on in the revision, is being better at the camera itself, working on the white balance and the lighting a lot.
I just wanted to come up off of